Houston Astros. Houston Astros. What's going on, guys? This is Kevin Riles with The Real Estate of Life. I am so excited. My Houston Astros, H-Town, baby, 713-281-832-346. Y'all didn't know about the 346. I'm just excited. If you're watching the video this week, I got my Astros shirt on. They're doing a parade as I'm doing the taping this week. But this week, we're going to talk about franchising and real estate. We'll have a guest, Daren Hawthorne with Golden Krust Caribbean Bakery and Grill. One of my clients, they're coming to Houston, and I want to introduce Golden Krust to you and also talk about how real estate affects franchising decisions. So can't wait for you to listen to this. Houston Astros. You can hit the music now.
Support for this program comes from the Digital Broadcasting Network, presenting podcasts and web series from everyday people who have an extraordinary passion to make the world a better place.
And welcome back to The Real Estate of Life with Kevin Riles. This is your host, Kevin Riles, and it's The Real Estate of Life with Kevin Riles and Friends. And I know a couple of episodes, Mr. Producer had crossed out the word friends because I've been by myself. He notices he doesn't know that I notice little stuff like that he does. But I have a friend. I consider him a friend. Client has become a friend. That's going to be our guest today. So once again, I want to say, because I'm wearing the Houston Astros shirt on the video this week. So Houston Astros, 713-281-832 H-Town. Just want to give a little shout out to my Astros as the parade is going on as we tape this today. But wanted to talk about franchising today. And I've been blessed, or some would say cursed, depending on which side of the fence you're on, to own a franchise. In my lifetime, I owned a RE/MAX franchise for 5 years. And so I've gone through the process of identifying a franchise, of paying franchise fees, of getting trained, of scouting locations. And so I ran across a really great client. They've been awesome to me and awesome to work with. And I wanted to get that client to talk about franchising, but also the real estate portions of considerations of franchising and as well. And so I want to introduce Golden Krust Caribbean Bakery and Grill, which is a franchise with over 100 plus locations headquartered in New York. And I was referred to this franchise, or to the VP of franchising, by a friend of mine, and I've just found the experience in working with them really good. And I'm not just saying that because he's on the line, which he is, but I can tell you in real estate there's certain clients that you just jive with, and this has definitely been that type of client for me. And so I really wanted to have them on so that he could tell their company story, because it's a very unique story. It's a very American dream story. And then I want to talk about the business of franchising. I consider Daren, who we'll be talking to here in a second, a good friend, but also an expert in franchising. Sometimes we just talk about the franchising model in general. So I want to introduce to some and reintroduce to others Mr. Daren Hawthorne with Golden Krust Caribbean Bakery and Grill. How you doing, Daren?
Not too bad, Kevin. How are you?
I cannot complain. Houston Astros. Are you a Yankees fan, by the way?
You know, I was going to say shout out to the Houston Astros, although they beat my Yankees in the American League Championship Series. And I am a big baseball fan, but as you know, my wife resides in Houston and comes from Houston. And
so you know where your bed is butted now, right?
Yeah. So I've got a lot of love for Houston. I'm not happy that they beat my Yankees, but if it wasn't us, you guys were definitely the next best thing. And I think it's a really good thing for the city, you know, with all that they had to endure. So I'm very happy for the city of Houston.
No, it's really hype here. It's really, really hype here. The only thing that would have made it better is if the grand opening of the two locations here were already open and they were downtown serving food. That would have been the only thing better.
We're not that far away.
I know.
We've got them coming up pretty soon.
Exactly. So, Daren, for those of you out there in my listening audience that are not familiar with the Golden Krust restaurant or Golden Krust brand here in Texas, very familiar along the East Coast, but can you just tell us a little bit about Golden Krust?
Yeah, certainly. So I'll walk through the history, and I'll be pretty swift. I'm an avid listener of your podcast. So I know that
Thank you,
you guys
sir.
are always punctual, and you're right. You stay within the time limit. So I'm gonna exercise brevity. So Golden Krust Caribbean Bakery and Grill, it is a family business. It is the epitome of the American dream. The business was actually started by my father and his wife, who of course is my mother, and 4 other shareholders back in 1989.
Okay.
The concept is a Jamaican eatery. So we're in the quick service restaurant industry. So we're not as fast as McDonald's, not as slow as a sit-down restaurant.
Can we hit him with
We're
the
right in
acronym, the
between, right
QSR?
around that Chipotle Panera Bread
Gotcha.
space. So let me just start with my father and my parents. My father migrated here in 1981, and he originally was a stock packer with the NYPD. So he pretty much packed equipment, guns and shields and vests in an NYPD equipment room.
Okay.
He did that for a number of years. But before my father got to America, he worked in my grandfather's bakery since 1949. It's called Hawthorne's Bakery and Son. Back in St. Andrew, Jamaica. They come from a place called Border, which is on the border of St. Andrew and St. Mary, Jamaica, which are parishes.
Okay.
Those that aren't familiar with parishes, you can liken them to cities, but if you're a Louisiana listener, you understand the concept.
Right.
So my father did learn some baking skills prior to coming to America. So while he was with the NYPD, he came up with this brilliant idea to sort of bring that taste of Jamaica to the United States. And that was in 1989. He got together with some of his siblings, his wife, who's my mother, went to the bank. Back in 1989, banks weren't very inclined to loan a whole lot of money to Jamaicans with heavy accents, especially to open a bakery. So
Right.
they actually got turned away by the bank and decided to pull their money together. It wasn't a whole lot of money between them all. It was about $100,000, and opened up their very first Golden Krust back in 1989. Business was good and business was rolling on, and as a few years went by, they started to open more and more, offering Jamaican cuisine from jerk chicken to oxtails to curry goat to beef patties and all that good stuff. So they started that in 1989. People were knocking on the doors like crazy in 96. So by 96, they started franchising, and they were actually issued the very first Caribbean franchise license in the United States.
Oh, wow.
So you fast, yeah. So that was certainly a great achievement. It's always a scary jump to go from private owned to offering up your business to others, where you realize that they have to invest significantly in your business and trust in you. But so it was a good step, a great learning experience. Fast forward, we're in 2017. And right now we're at about 120 locations, 15 under construction. We're in 9 states, and Texas will be our 10th state. And we're also building 2 stores in Canada, so we'll be international for the first time. We're hoping to open one of those stores by the end of this year of 2017. So, and Golden Krust currently has a few models of income. So one model we do franchise, and for those that aren't familiar with franchising, you typically make your revenue from royalties that the franchisees pay typically on a weekly basis. But we're lucky enough to have a few models of income. So one, we do franchise, so we collect franchise fees.
Okay.
We also manufacture most of our products. So our products are also
So you make the donuts as well.
Yeah, so they purchase the jerk chicken and the pastries, the bakery items, and the patties from corporate. So that's our franchising model. We've also got a retail model where we're in over 30,000 supermarkets across the country. We're in Dollar Trees, Walmarts, Piggly Wiggly's, Publix, Family Dollars, you name it. You can get our patties, typically beef or chicken, in those markets, and those are ready to eat. So they're microwavable patties as opposed to the stores where they're baked freshly. We've also got a presence in municipalities and states. We've got contracts with the Department of Education, so we're supplying patties to school systems here in New York City. The Department of Corrections, we're in the prisons here in New York City, and we're also honored to say that we supply patties to 33 military bases across the globe. So that's across 33 different countries. So that's something we're certainly proud of. It's been a rags to riches story. We were on, in the early days when the business first started, we were on food stamps and the projects and, the whole nine. And the shareholders have certainly made the ultimate sacrifice, and we're lucky enough and blessed enough to be able to reap the fruits of their labor. So it's certainly that American dream story, something that stories I don't think are talked about often enough, or people think that they're no longer possible. My father and his siblings are certainly a great example of that. And you'll hear me refer to my father often, although there were 6 shareholders, because he's been the president and CEO from the very beginning. So that's where we are now. System-wide, we are about $100 million in revenue from the franchise stores total. Franchisees have invested over $30 million in our concept, which we're certainly proud of. And it is a family business. There are 40 family members in the business.
And I think I've dealt with at least 6 of them, I know. So.
Yeah, you've dealt with at least 6. So there's 40 of us in one capacity or another, whether you drive trucks or whether you're in the administration, in the offices, or an executive or a franchisee. We certainly have a good amount of family members that do operate locations. So that's always a good thing. When people are investing in their own company, that's always a good sign. So that's where we are. We're looking to be at 200 stores by 2020.
So let's talk about
growth path. Go ahead, Kevin.
And I hate to interrupt you. I just wanted to. You talked about the locations, and I've been privy to kind of your recipe for finding franchise locations, and you and I have talked about where you guys are located in New York and Atlanta and Florida. So for those folks out there that are considering any type of franchise, really, but let's just say it's a restaurant franchise, kind of give me some of your thoughts as to location, because one of the very first times I met with you and we rode around Houston, you had some very specific criteria, not only in demographics, but also kind of close to certain industries. So I'll be interested for folks to hear kind of what your philosophy is as it pertains to real estate.
Okay, certainly. So location. Those are always
and you're done, right?
three key words in franchising and picking a location. Because if a franchisee does not make it, if they do happen to fail, which you never want the location to be a factor in why they didn't make it. So you want to take that out of consideration immediately. As you stated, demographics are important from a location standpoint, and specifically within demographics, depending on what particular franchise you're running, you obviously want to break it down and really understand who your customer is. You need to know whether your customer is within that 21 to 35 years of age range, or 50 to 70. You need to know who's coming into your store, who you anticipate to come into your store. And after you have that established, you build your criteria based off of that. What does your customer base look like? And where are they? And one thing that you and I always talk about, and what we believe in from a Golden Krust standpoint, is we want to be where the other big players are. Where are the other QSRs, fast casuals, or fast food restaurants that people are going to? What's the average ticket of that particular restaurant, and does it resemble ours? Another question that you want to ask yourself, especially when you're looking at other business models, is that customer that's in your competitor's store, are they inclined to try other food? You'll see it in all. There's studies, there's research out there, and you realize that, for instance, people that eat at Chipotle, they're more inclined to try more non-traditional and more ethnic foods. So those are things that you have to do specifically for your brand and whatever fits your model or your franchise model. But location is always important from a foot traffic standpoint, from an accessibility standpoint. You know, here in New York, a lot of people don't drive, so we make sure that all of our locations are right by bus stops or right by train stations or train stops. Down in the South, we're comfortable with putting locations in places where there isn't necessarily that public transportation outlet, because people don't necessarily ride the train or get on the bus. So in the South, we typically look for anchors. We want to be near the Walmart. We want to be near the stadiums. We want to be near the Home Depots and other places that just drive heavy foot traffic. And the good thing is now in 2017, we've got all this research and all the models, and we've come far enough where we don't just have to eye things. Back in the day, my father used to just pick cities wherever Air Jamaica flew, and that's where we went.
Right. That was the market analysis period.
Yeah, that was always his market analysis. And as you know, a location could be good on paper, but you always have to go there and see it, because it can be perfect demographically from an income standpoint and from co-tenancy standpoint. But when you see it and when you go there physically, can you make a left turn into that particular location? Are people only on one side of the street? For what reason are they on that?
On the go home side or the go to work side, right?
Right. And so all those things matter. People don't like to be inconvenienced to come to you. If your brand is strong enough, you hope that they would come to you regardless of how inconvenient your location is. But for the most part, we like to be as visible as possible. We like to look at end caps, and we like to get drive-thrus when we can. Of course, we're in the restaurant industry, so we look for pre-existing restaurants so that we can save money on the build-out cost. And by that, I mean a lot of these pre-existing restaurants will have already had a grease trap. They may have already had a ventilation hood, and that alone can save you $50,000.
And I'm gonna pause you right. I'm gonna pause you right there. For those of you that are not in this business, restaurants business specifically, your vent trap, grease trap, vent hood, end caps. All of these are things that are very important to restaurants, and specifically, like he said, grease traps and vent hoods, 50 to 60,000, depending on the size, or even more if it's a huge restaurant. So those things, if they're already there, so we call those second generation spaces, as he mentioned. Second generation spaces are spaces that might have been another restaurant before that restaurant moved or didn't survive, and so now a new concept is coming into that particular location. So just wanted to drop that nugget just to kind of be on even terminology with the audience. But go ahead, Daren. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, so that's extremely important and certainly worth repeating. And then, again, with pre-existing restaurants, if you don't have a pre-existing restaurant, you just have to be prepared to absorb those extra costs. Right. Even something as basic as gas. Is there gas at that particular parcel? If not, how far away is the gas? Do you have to bring the gas 300 feet? That can cost you, sometimes depending on where you are, $100 to $300 a foot to bring a gas line in.
We had that example in Houston.
Other things that you can negotiate out at the beginning of the lease.
Yeah, we had that example in Houston. As you remember, there was a location near the medical center here that you guys loved, large parking lot, anchored space, and the utilities would have been, let's just say, extremely expensive there on Main Street to bring what you needed to that space.
Right. And at that point, you have to weigh whether it's worth it or not, because at the end of the day, it's all about your return on investment. And we typically, from our franchise standpoint, we like to keep our rents under. Of course, rent is obviously as important as any location,
right?
As its physical presence, but we like to keep our rent under 7% of our gross revenue. So that's sort of the target we look for. And of course, people say, "But how do you know what you're going to make?"
Right. That's exactly the question.
How do you, and in franchising, there's a bunch of rules, obviously. As most people know, or maybe not actually. Franchising is one of those very popular things that happen, but a lot of people don't know the intricacies of it. But as a franchisor, you're very limited on what you can disclose to potential franchisees. So we're actually not allowed to give projected sales and things of that nature. But we do that internally, but we can't disclose it to franchisees. However, franchisees can ask a pre-existing franchisee what their sales are and what they anticipate they would make at that particular location. But we're definitely always shooting for that, keeping it under 7% of your gross revenue. So that'll sort of fall in line with our profit and loss statement and sort of the target that we look for. And of course, I think, and I've heard one of your segments already that dealt with lease negotiations, so I won't get into that too much. But I know that, and that falls under, obviously, real estate and franchising. Lease negotiation is so important. And
let's just say Golden Krust has y'all have a very strict way of doing your leases. I said Golden Krust has a very strict way of doing their leases, and when I say that, I mean there are certain provisions that are just non-negotiable in their leases. So it was interesting going through that process with you guys. Yeah.
I mean, definitely we can be sticklers for certain provisions. One thing, I mean, I think you'd mentioned this in a previous podcast, like an acceleration clause. That is considered a deal breaker for us, and for those that don't know what that is. Typically, if you default on a lease, the landlord has an ability to accelerate all payments due under the lease for the remaining duration of the lease.
I call it the give me my money lease provision. So.
That's exactly what it is, and that's why we do avoid them. And since the topic is franchising, I'll just let the folks know how we sort of structure our leases, and different franchisors do it in different ways, and sometimes a mix of ways. We typically, as a franchisor, we will hold a lot of our leases, and then we will sublease out to the franchisee. And the reason why we do that is it gives a lot of the landlords comfort in knowing that they've got a bigger corporation really to have on the hook, one.
Right.
And two, they're just more comfortable in dealing with deeper pockets and more experienced folks. So what we typically do is we lease, and I guess I should have started there. We don't really own any of our properties. We own 2 of them. All the rest are all leases. And so we, the franchisor, go on those leases as a tenant, and we sublease to our franchisees, and we just execute a sublease. If our franchisees got strong enough financials, we'll put them on the lease, and then we'll execute what they call is a landlord agreement. So that's an agreement between franchisor and landlord of what our rights are in the event that tenant/franchisee defaults. So that's typically what you see in all franchises. It's either going to be a sublease, and the franchisor is the tenant and holds the lease, or on the contrary, the franchisee will hold the lease, and the franchisor will execute a landlord agreement between the landlord and the franchisor.
And I think that's helpful for people to know. Again, we're talking about Golden Krust Caribbean Bakery and Grill as a franchisor, but that is, as Daren said, pretty standard across most service-related franchisees. And so, Daren, real quick, want to get to 2 more things before we kind of end. Why Houston? Other than your beautiful fiance, now wife, being here, why did you? What made you come to Houston? What made Golden Krust come to Houston?
Houston is one of those untapped markets that's along the food belt that we've had our eyes on for a very long time. It's just so densely populated, which is always a good thing, so that we can check off the population number off our checklist. And D, you just see such a great variety of food down there. So it seems that the palates are extremely prolific down there in Houston. And C, quite frankly and quite honestly, we finally found appropriate partners and franchisees that we believe can help us establish a brand down there in Houston, because we do have several places that we would like to go to and establish our name, but without the proper franchisees or the proper partners, then we will not enter that market. So we're certainly coming down there to help you guys out and engage in the food belt, and hopefully we can get you guys to keep coming back into our stores.
The food belt. What is considered the food belt?
Yeah, and that's certainly an underserved market,
Okay.
in my opinion, from a Jamaican food standpoint. I've been there on several occasions, and I've done several SWOT analysis. It's certainly a good place for us to set up shop and fill a void, at least in my opinion, a void in that market.
Yeah, and when we first drove around, there are basically 3-4 Caribbean themed restaurants, none franchises here in the Houston market. So I think there's a significant opportunity here. So with that being said, you want to talk about the 2 new locations that one is coming online November 14th. I'm not quite sure when the other one is.
Absolutely.
And kind of talk about where they are. Yeah.
So we do have 2 sets of franchise owners that are preparing and getting ready to open up in the weeks to come. One location is at 8366 Westheimer Road. Of course, that's Houston. The zip code 77063, and that's on Westheimer and Denville's across streets. I'm gonna give it to them one more time, Kevin. So
sure.
8366 Westheimer Road. Of course, the great city of Houston, 77063, and we're looking to open up there about November 14th. The store is pretty much ready to go. It looks beautiful. Everybody's trained up, and we're ready to make magic happen there. And the other
I'm ready for my patty.
Yeah, ready for your patties. 9 varieties, 9 flavors. The other location's at what they call Shops at Three Corners, and that's 8236 Kirby Drive, of course, the great city of Houston again, 77054. 8236 Kirby Drive, and it's in Houston, 77054. We'll likely be opening up that location shortly after Thanksgiving, and again, that's at the Shops at Three Corners, right across from NRG Stadium. So we look forward to seeing people come in there on Sundays and during the rodeo and any other event in which they use NRG.
Football games and everything.
To seeing that crowd there.
Well, so for those of you that are from Houston, Westheimer and Dunvale is just less than a mile out from the Galleria, right at a mile out from the Galleria along Westheimer, right across from Fadi's. For those of you that are familiar with that area of town. So it's evenly between the Galleria and basically the Beltway. And then the Kirby location, again, as Daren said, is right across from NRG Stadium on what I call the restaurant side of the Shops at Three Corners, because there are multiple restaurants there, but we don't care about those other restaurants. We only care about the one that we talk about today, which is the Golden Krust Caribbean Bakery and Grill. So you'll be able to go to Texans game and grab you some patties before or after and rodeo, as he mentioned. So, and I must say they're really good locations, if I do say so myself, that they are great locations. Shout out to me a little bit. Well, I will say this. I had significant one of the things in looking for locations is people think that in commercial real estate there is a commercial MLS with every property that's for lease in some database. And to be honest with you, I've seen statistics that only really 65% of available properties are listed in our different commercial databases that I have access to. So the Westheimer location, we had been looking up and down Westheimer, but the guy that's on the phone actually found that location. I'd seen that building, but I didn't know that there was a vacancy. So when they come to town and they work Golden Krust. And so Daren actually drove up and down Westheimer and beat the real estate guy to that location. So I should offer parenthetical reference and credit to Daren.
I appreciate it, Kevin. We all appreciate the work that you certainly put in driving us around and pointing us in the right direction. We rely on people and relationships so much whenever we enter a new market. So we certainly want to applaud you for your effort and your patience with us. And you're right, a lot of times it does just take boots on the ground to drive up and down and sort of familiarize yourself with an area, and sometimes you get lucky up on a location that's not listed. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's amazing at what goes into 1,500 square feet spaces in the large city, and the amount of studying. And sometimes it's it checks every box. There's a couple locations that I can remember you and I looked at out in the suburbs that look great, and then y'all ran y'all's demographics, look great demographically, but then there was like, for instance, that statistic you talked about where people were more likely to eat food that wasn't a part of the normal course of burgers and fries and chicken and things of that nature, and that box wasn't checked, so we moved on. So it's amazing what goes into locating spots. And I would say this for the audience: this is not just for franchises. This is really for any commercial leasing spaces, depending on the business that you're in. It is more than just, oh, that's an affordable rate, or, oh, it's on a corner. You really do have to think about, for instance, the go home side or the go to work side. You have to think about the true size that you need. You have to think about, are there competing businesses or ancillary businesses where people are going for one thing and see your spot and go for another. So there's more than just, oh, cool, that's a location. I always tell my class at Prairie View, if you've ever seen a Walgreens not on a corner and not lit up at night,
Yeah, that's true.
I don't care where you go in the country.
Very good considerations, and whenever you see a potential competitor, if you decide to move forward with that location, you need to decide what's your plan of action going to be with that competitor who's selling the same things as you. What's your plan? Is your plan to, you got to do your due diligence. You got to see how much they're selling it for. How much are they offering for that particular price? Talking about food industry, you see that competitor selling X amount for $10. You may sell it at $9, but then you may not be making your margins. Or you sell it above $10 knowing that he's only making a certain percentage of margin. So all that goes into the consideration of a location.
Because at the end of the day, rent is due. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
no matter what happens, rent is due.
Well, hey, we've kind of come to the end of our time, Daren. And before we get off, I wanted you to let us know a little bit about you. So tell us your background, and then I have one other question, and then we'll call it a day.
Sure. Just really quickly, I've grown up in the business. I remember being in the office as a little kid. From the day the first doors were open until now, I had worked at all levels within the business, as a cashier, as a baker, as a server, at whatever the youngest possible legal age is. I'm not going to disclose what age it was, but whatever the youngest possible legal age was at the time, that's when I was working in the store. I went to undergrad at American University in D.C., and even when I was there, I served on a team called the Concept Development Strategist Team for Golden Krust, a.k.a. Think Tank, while I was away. After D.C., I went to Southern University Law Center down in Louisiana. Shout out to Southern. And I was able to get my law degree down there. I was fortunate to graduate at the top of my class, and I was able to give back to the community while I was there. And I was on several boards and several honorary committees. And I spent my time giving back while I was down at law school, whether it's from a teaching assistant standpoint. I TA'd for contracts and legal writing, and I'd always tried to engender change in whatever leadership role I had down there with the community around me. So certainly always want to give a shout out to my HBCU and Southern University. And so now I'm here back in the business. I appreciate the fact that I'm able to work at all levels of the business. Right now in my role as Executive Vice President of Franchising and Corporate Counsel, I oversee everything that happens in the franchising department, and that ranges from franchise sales and development, selling the franchises, operations and compliance, the everyday support to the franchisees, marketing and public relations, legal, real estate, design and construction, operations, all that stuff falls under my umbrella. So they say that, I'm a lawyer by training and a businessman by trade. But it's certainly something that I would never ever take back if I could do it again. You know, I really, really enjoy what I do. I enjoy working with the family, and being part of what I believe is a company that's on a great growth path, a company with great morals. You know, we do a bunch for scholarships and all that other stuff that I can talk about that for a whole nother episode. But, you know, we're talking about franchising, and there's a lot of things to consider when you go into franchising, and you're reminded of why you do it every day when people put their houses up and mortgage their homes and walk through the door and say, here's all the money I've got, and I want to be a part of what you guys do. So it's really special, and it means a lot to me. So we take what we do very seriously.
Well, I appreciate you being on this version of the Real Estate of Life with Kevin Riles. If folks out there want to find out more about Golden Krust, they can go to goldenkrustbakery.com, and that's crust with a K. goldenkrustbakery.com. For those of you that are in and around the Houston area, November 14th, Westheimer and Dunville, the patties, all of the jerk chicken that you want, all of the everything that's going to happen as far as in the Caribbean restaurant, Jamaican themed restaurant will be there. I will be there hungry. And so I plan to be there.
Come hungry. Please
exactly.
Come hungry.
Yeah, come hungry. Exactly. So, Daren, again, I want to thank you. I will definitely have you back on to kind of talk about some of those other things that you mentioned, but I just wanted to give people a glimpse into, from a corporate perspective, from a franchisee perspective, real estate and kind of some of the considerations, and also want to hear people to hear your story, because I think that y'all's family story is just the classic American dream story. So again, I really do appreciate it.
Well, I certainly appreciate the time. Shout out to Mr. Producer as well. And again, thank you for all the work that you've done for us down there. We look forward to opening at least 30 more down in Texas and primarily in Houston. So we've got a lot of business to do together and a lifelong friendship. So I appreciate the time.
I appreciate it as well. And I want to thank everyone, as I do every week, for listening to the Real Estate of Life with Kevin Riles. I'll see you next week. If you have a question about anything that we've talked about on the Real Estate of Life with Kevin Riles, a real estate question or a life question, no matter what, email me at kevin@kevinriles.com. Again, that's kevin@kevinriles.com. I'll get it. I'll make sure that I respond to you via email, but also I want to kind of collect these answers so that I could help everyone else. So again, kevin@kevinriles.com.